Hi everybody, I am giving you a really great extra credit project. If you want to go into your backyard or your front yard or the neighbor's yard or wherever, you can be safe, right? We were just gardening out here and I found some clay. So I'm going to show you how to process this. It's also kind of fun to see all the things that are growing. This is going to be kale, and those are going to be beans, and these are going to be snap peas. You know, Armageddon. You've got to plan ahead. So these were the hunks of clay that I kind of pulled out of the garden when we were working on it, and you can just feel it in the garden when they're squishy and they kind of stick together. But what I'm going to do now is bust them up into just a ice cream bucket. So that's the next step. I let them dry a little bit. If they're not dry, you know, whatever, it's gonna work anyway. But I did let these dry for a couple of days before I'm busting them up. Up to you. All right, so how do you know if you have found clay, right? Like I said, there's a lot of it, but it's not just everywhere, right? You've got to do a little digging. And so what I'm looking for when I'm digging, and you can kind of see it in here a little bit, is a change of color from just black to kind of a amber brown. And there I can see, ooh, that's a good shot. Right there, right? So you can kind of see that there's a little vein of clay going through there. It's not a ton, but the other thing that will tell you, besides color, is of course the qualities of the material. So I'm just going to squish this, and you see how some of it is just turning, or is just dusting off, but some of it is kind of coming together. If it comes together, it's clay, right? If this was all just dirt, I could squish it. Oops, sorry. I'm watching my hand and not the video screen. If it was just dirt, I could squish it endlessly and it would just powder into nothing. So I'm just going to add this to my bucket there, but like this I know is dirt because I've already kind of discarded it, right? But so I'm trying to squish it together and it doesn't really come together. I mean, there's enough clay in there to make it a little bit plastic, but not really. And that said, you know, if you're not finding like pure veins of clay, that's not a big deal because we're going to process it anyway. But it's kind of fun to just dig a couple little holes in the yard, of course, with the permission of the yard owner. You don't want to be making people mad as you're going to find clay. Ooh, this looks really good. See that nice brown? Yeah, baby. So I'm going to squish it. I'm going to take that root out. I'm going to squish it and see how it comes together. Ooh, and that is, right, so there's more clay in this than there was in that last handful. This really stuck together nicely. So that goes into the bucket. Oh, look at my little grubby friend. Ew. Anyway, but again, with like dirt, if it's just dirt, it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna hold together very well. So that's how you know what you got. Now I'm gonna just go through and kind of pick the vegetation out of here, or the debris, you know. There's gonna be a bunch of junk in the clay. It's kind of amazing, right? When you think about this and then you think about the nice powdered clay that we get in the studio and how kind of pure, you'll see on the bags now when we go back to school that some of it says that it's air floated, which is a process that they use to really clean up the clay and get all the impurities out of it. But anyway, yeah, go through, pick the vegetation out, and next step is water. Okay, see you again. Oh, that sounded weird. So I just added my water, and I think it's so beautiful. Look at those color changes, right? Now you can really see the dirt, the black, from the clay, the kind of red, terracotta colored, right? And there is quite a bit of iron in this clay. It's pretty impure. But you'll also notice in the water, see all these little boogers? That is all dirt and organic material. So that will all come to the surface, and that's what we're looking for. I'm going to put more water in this so that the debris will float up a little bit taller, but I don't want to really agitate it, so I'm not going to squish it, I'm not going to stir it, I'm just going to lightly pour water over it. All right, so now with a little bit more water in my bucket, you can see all this crud that just comes to the surface. And that is exactly what I wanted to have happen. The dirt is much lighter. It's why so much clay is on the bottom of lake beds, right? Dirt kind of floats, or sometimes you'll get that kind of muddy skim, but the clay tends to stay on the bottom. So cleaning this up. If I had some nice cheesecloth, I could just run the water through a cheesecloth, but not a lot of cheesecloth here in the hole in home, so just gonna pick out the boogers. All right, see you next time. All right, so now I'm moving to kind of the next stage. I'm kind of just mixing it lightly by hand. And one of the things I find really interesting about just the difference between dirt and clay, now it's kind of breaking up, getting more slip-like, but I'll still have these like hunks in here. And these are clay hunks. And man, they're pretty hard to break up, as we know, right, from our reclaim. Belting those big hunks with a hammer, like I'm squishing as hard as I can here, and I'm having a really hard time breaking this piece up. But clay, when it sticks together, is compacted, it's very tough stuff to break up. More time in water will help. But the other kind of cool thing that's happening is now I'm stirring, and now as it settles a little bit, now can you see all of the junk coming to the top, right? So that's the stuff that's breaking out of the dirt. It's also some of the dirt. And now I've got a big kind of smear of goo on top. And so again, I'm just going to do that by hand. And then you can see here's all the junk, right? Just going to get rid of it. And it's going to take some time, but you know what? Hey, you don't have to go to class today, so this isn't a bad thing to do, and it's beautiful out. So doing that by hand was taking forever. So I went in and got a tissue. Obviously you don't want to overuse the toilet paper, people, but just like a simple facial tissue. And because of whatever, this seems to work a lot better. So I just kind of go into the edges. You can see where all that dirt is gathered. Go into those edges and just kind of scoop it up, and then I shake it out. Oops, sorry. Scoop it up. Shake it out. Hey guys, don't forget that the awards for the Student Arts Show are happening on Monday. They're hoping to post them by noon. But I happen to know that some people won some money, some of your friends, some of your people. So, check into that. All right, so I got most of the goo out. I'm pretty happy with, I still have some stragglers, right? But so now what I want to do is to get to the clay, right? And this is all just kind of water, muddy water sitting on top. And I'm just going to tip this, and you can see that the dirt stuff is coming off of the clay too, which is kind of cool. Can you guys see that? I'm trying to get you the best sun angle. But yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and drain some of this. And we will be pleasantly surprised, I believe, by, right now here you can see like the last of the dirt going. Well, it's probably not the last of the dirt, but the majority of the dirt, right? And does that stuff look a little bit familiar to anybody? Look a little bit like slip? Yum! My next step now is going through and just breaking it up, right? And remember I said it didn't all have to be perfectly dry, right? The stuff that was perfectly dry really absorbed that water beautifully, but some of it is, again, it's pretty like chunky. It's hard to bust up these chunks. So I'm just gonna do that by hand right now and get this into kind of a nice smooth slurry. Now if I had the tools that I have at school, like a little handy mixer, that drink mixer that we sometimes use to mix up slips and glazes and things. Something like that would be great to put in here right now. It would make it really homogeneous and nice. But in the absence of those things, I'm just going to squish it with my fingers and try to make it as consistent and non-chunky as possible. All right, now don't do this without the permission of your household. But my husband is very understanding and knows that I hijack a lot of kitchen tools for my art, so I just hijack a fork, and that is really helping with the chunks. So, little suggestion, be sure and ask permission. Don't want you getting in trouble. All right, bye. So I'm pretty happy with how my nice kind of slip is looking right now. It's settling like slip will. But what I did do, because I had kind of a whole bunch of chunks in my hand that the fork wouldn't crush, so I brought those in and I ran them through the sieve in the kitchen, right? And again, don't do this unless you get permission. I know, God, I sound like I'm talking to kids. I know, you're all adults, you know how to handle this stuff. But I did not run the clay through it, but I wanted to give you an example. If you really want to make refined garden clay, run it through a sieve. But these were just kind of the rocks that I found, right? And are these too big to work with? No, they would be absolutely fine. And this is the kind of stuff that we find in a lot of ancient pots for a reason. They didn't have sieves. So, so you can take it out or not take it out. It's entirely up to you. Next step is drying the clay so we can use it. All right, folks, well, I went in and grabbed some fabric. It's nothing fancy. I was actually sewing masks for people, and this was some kind of junked fabric that I got rid of. But, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry out this clay that we just made, or that we just processed into slip. And, you know, it's not a whole bunch, so I don't need anything huge, but I really want to use nice smooth fabric, not a towel, not anything with texture in it, because that makes it a lot harder to lift the clay later. So I'm just gonna spatulize it onto here. Spatulize it, that's a word. And again, I hijacked some of our kitchen tools to get a nice spatula. You can do this just by hand if you don't have a spatula, but so I'm just going to lay this out, depending on what kind of time you're working with. Like if you want to get it like, oh, I want to get this done right now, today, I would spread this real thin, and it'll probably be ready to, I say probably, I'm not sure. I would say it will probably be ready in about an hour to wedge into nice plastic clay. But if you don't want to rush it, you can leave it kind of clumped up, and it will take longer to it will take a little bit longer to dry. So I'm going to kind of call it somewhere in that halfway area. There we go. And you guys have probably seen this around sometimes in the studio. Like if I'm working with porcelain, I always wet it down to slip and then lay it out on some fabric or on some plaster to dry it. You know, our normal clay gets pretty plastic pretty easily, so we don't have to do all that to it. But there we go. So now I'm just gonna wait, and now as this firms up, right, as it starts getting dry, it'll of course get drier along the edges, just like your slabs do when we're building pots, or like your rims do when we're throwing bowls. So this outside edge is gonna dry quickest. So as I come back, and I'm gonna check it every 10 minutes or so, I'm gonna, and I would not consider this thin. This is about half an inch thick. That won't dry super fast. But I'm going to come around and kind of kick up the edges, because the edges will dry quicker, and I'll just fold those inside until it's a nice, workable piece of clay. All right. Enjoy the sunshine, folks. Hi, guys. Hey, it's been about 3 hours with this clay. I got sidetracked by a couple things, but as you can see, it's gone from slip to clay. So I talked about like bringing the edges in. Like if I feel this right now, like the edges are, you know, pretty firm, but the inside is still kind of gooey. So, you know, if you had a bigger piece, or if you were waiting longer, you'd want to move that in, especially if you're working thinner. If you work thinner, you will find that it dries a lot quicker and gets harder on those edges. But so, I'm going to pack this into a ball, and I'm going to show you how to hand wedge. And this is just about a pound of clay, and a pound of clay runs about baseball size, right? So if you can think of baseball, baseball size is a pound, 2 pounds is roughly softball size. So this is this big. There we go. That's my pound of clay. So, and a pound of clay is really easy to hand wedge. And this is a great way to work clay, especially if you don't have, if you don't have a good wedging table, or if you don't have a table that is covered with something that'll release nicely. But so with hand wedging, I've got this nice ball of clay. I'm going to push with the heel of one hand and then just kind of keep twisting. So it's still doing that kind of twisting motion like we do with chrysanthemum wedging, which was on an earlier video, in that reclaiming clay video. And you know, this clay is actually a little bit firm, so I'm going to, I'm literally going to dunk it into some water and then come back and do some more hand wedging. So how do, you know, I just went through that really fast, I guess, but because it's a little stiff, but it's basically push and then just kind of pull back up into that palm so that you're addressing new clay each time, but not really spreading it out, just kind of working it into that palm in a rotation. So I'm drawing from the thumb towards my body, right, this way, drawing towards my body and then pushing back down. Like that. And if you have the right water content, you'll have a very nice piece of homogeneous clay. I'm gonna add a little water. I was actually doing a Zoom meeting with the clay 2, 3, and 4. So that's what got me off track, but it was worth it. A little bit of water will make this golden. All right, I will see you soon when I start creating a beautiful piece with this beautiful clay. Oh, wait. See you later. Ah, so much better. This clay is now really nice and soft, so I should be able to show you that hand wedging a little bit better. So this heel, the heel of my right hand is going into the heel of my left hand with a push, and then my fingers are drawing that clay towards me, pushing, 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 and it's just little pushes, right? We don't want to do big, huge pushes. So it's just kind of rotating, rotating, rotating with pushes. And man, that feels pretty plastic. It's a little bit gritty, I think, a little bit groggy compared to our clay. But it feels, I mean, come on, right? That's clay. Ooh, should I try a nice big coil? Hi. I'm gonna, remember this coil thing? Might be a total disaster, but, oh, nope. Look at that. Little compression goes a long way with clay. So isn't that amazing? So I literally dug this out of the garden at about noon. And now I can start building. You can slip and score just like you would with your own clay. You can pinch pot, you can slab it, you can do anything with garden clay that you can do with your normal clay. The thing that you won't be able to do is high fire it, because there's so much iron in this clay that it's probably not going to be able to withstand high temperatures, but it'll do low temperatures. And our next chapter is going to be how to fire it in your barbecue grill. Woohoo! All right, see you later, guys.